Krista, do we have anybody for public comment?
I did not receive any.
Good. All right, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors, Tuesday, November 9th to order. And we will have the clerk call the, oh, excuse me. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United
United
States
States of America.
and to the republic
Which
stands
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
All right, thank you. Now we'll have the clerk call the roll, please.
Supervisor Johnson,
Here.
Supervisor Headland, Supervisor Score,
Here.
Supervisor Steen,
Here.
Supervisor Zond,
Here.
Supervisor Gary Bjork,
Here.
Supervisor Maves,
Here.
Supervisor Quinn,
Here.
Supervisor Rogers,
Here.
Supervisor Anderson,
Here.
Supervisor Kinnear,
Here.
Supervisor Cromry,
Here.
Supervisor Calabrese,
Here.
Supervisor Keeter,
Here.
Supervisor Vogel,
Here.
Supervisor McCullough,
Here.
Supervisor Story,
She was
She's-
there. She's there. She
There it is.
Here.
Supervisor Vandermeulen,
Here.
Supervisor Niehoff,
Here.
Supervisor Morehouse,
Here.
Supervisor Kennedy,
Here.
Supervisor Tripp,
Here.
Supervisor Prochnow,
Here.
Supervisor Jensen,
Here.
Supervisor Larry Bjork,
Here.
Supervisor Bauer,
Here.
Supervisor Lenow,
Here.
Supervisor Hartung, Chairman Bartlett.
Yes, here. All right, thank you. Now I need a motion for the approval of the minutes.
I so move.
Supervisor Steen moves, Supervisor Leno seconds.
Mr. Chairman, there is one modification to the minutes.
Right.
Approval of the minutes from the September 15th meeting should be Supervisor Larry Bjork, not Supervisor Gary Bjork, who was missing. I apologize for mixing up my Bjorks. Apologies, gentlemen.
Any other discussion? If not, would your motion be okay to accept the minutes as amended? Supervisor Steen,
Yes, I'll just, my motion is to accept the minutes as amended.
and seconded.
And the second is fine, yes.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor of the minutes as amended, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
You might note for the record that Supervisor Headland has joined us now.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Presentation of petitions, memorials, and other communications recognizing the retirement of county employees. Barbara Jar, Marge Jodwin, and Dennis Reed. And this is quite an accomplishment because if you pay attention, that's over 100 years of experience that we've lost in 3 staff people. It's remarkable. We want to thank them for their years of service. And hopefully someday we'll have meetings in person so we can thank them in person. Also, I would like to recognize our veterans that are on the county board. I would also like to recognize our veterans that are county staff and all the veterans that are listing in our county and state, and I guess all over. But we thank them for their service. Veterans Day is coming up on November 11th, which is just a couple of days from now. So we want to thank them for their service. Thank you very much. Moving on, we will open the public hearing for the proposed FY 2022 budget and property tax levy. Krista, do we have anyone that wants to speak at the public hearing for the budget or the levy?
No, nobody's here to speak.
All right, well then we will close that public hearing and open the public hearing for the redistricting plan. Krista, do we have anybody that wants to speak at the public hearing for the redistricting plan?
No public comments.
All right, we will close that public hearing also then. And we have no public comment today. So we'll move to appointments. You should have all gotten an email with your appointment sheets. And for the Housing Authority, for the term expires 2026, appoint to succeed James Tripp, it's Jody Crumry. And for the Transit Commission, term expires October 2024, reappoint Richard Johnson. For the Zoning Ordinance Board of Adjustment, term expires July 2024, appoint to succeed Patrick McCoy, Peter Score. And I need a motion to accept those appointments.
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
Okay, I had a whole bunch of them there. That was Supervisor Morehouse, I believe. and
Correct.
Supervisor Steen seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. And also appoint for the Veteran Service Commission, a term expires November 2024, reappoint Marlon Severson. And that's a chair's appointment, so. Moving on to the report of the county manager. Mr. Miller, would you like to start with COVID-19 update, I guess?
Yes, I will. I will say that this is my least favorite thing to do these past year and a half, going on 2 years. I wish I didn't have to, because I wish that this pandemic was over with. But I don't know if any of you still read the weekly emails that we put out. Maybe, and if you don't, I totally understand, because it's just a drumbeat, it seems, of the same. We've seen a recent surge in COVID cases here in the county. 220 new confirmed cases and 42 other probable cases in just 1 week. An average of 37 a day. Previously, it was dropped down to 16 a day, and a high rate of transmission is considered 5 a day. So we are going the wrong direction still on COVID and our numbers. And in talking with KT Gallagher, our public health director, she said it is reasonable to assume that the known cases, of which there are almost 6,700 so far, is probably half of the actual number of cases that we've had. which works out to nearly 30% of the population of the entire county. Of course, there's the known cases are those PCR tests that are more definitive. The antigen tests or the home tests account for another 708 probable cases right now. There are 9 people, 9 of the residents, Dunn County residents, who are in the hospital with the virus. And we're now up to 48 residents who have passed away. That number, unfortunately, continues to slowly climb, and it becomes easy just to see it as a number. I try to tell myself to count out loud from 1 to 48 and consider that each number I say is a person, someone's loved one, someone's spouse, father, mother, a family member, friend, neighbor. And if you think of that each time you go from 1 to 48, the seriousness of what we're dealing with and continue to deal with hopefully drives home to you. We have seen some outbreaks in our local schools. The public health department had to close 2 classrooms because of outbreaks. We also are beginning to see an uptick in people who previously had COVID-19 9 months or even a year ago who have contracted it again, which gives lie to the notion that, well, once you've had COVID, you don't need to worry about it anymore. Apparently, the immunity that's conferred after you recover from COVID is not a permanent or lasting one. So as I said in my email, the pandemic is not over, not globally and certainly not for us. And we encourage everybody to continue to practice those safety protocols, wear masks when you're out and about in public, maintain social distancing, wash your hands frequently. That's the COVID-19 update. If there are any questions.
Any questions from the supervisors? Supervisor Steen.
Yes, Mr. Miller, I wonder if you or KT could tell us how many urgent care beds have been tied up and how many are available?
It's not a number that I have, and KT is not with us tonight, but I can tell you that it has been regularly the case this fall that our hospitals are at peak capacity, that sometimes they are having to divert, and that we have been down as low as 1 ICU bed available. So it continues to impact our health system in a serious way. And that is one of the major reasons why we continue to encourage vaccinations, because vaccinations have proven very effective in keeping people out of the hospital. I continue to hear stories, anecdotes from people whose loved ones get sick or injured with something else. And I hear stories of having to go, they can't go to Rochester because it's full, and they're having to go to La Crosse or further to find a hospital bed because our regional, the ones in the region are full. So it's a serious, that's why it's a public health crisis. And we need to encourage everybody that we know to act responsibly as a result.
Thank you.
Supervisor
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I can echo what Mr. Miller has said, from my experience, but I'd also like to make a comment. I really strongly encourage the health department to do outreach for vaccinations and not wait to be invited. That's been a policy. And I know they're taking a lot of heat and abuse, but public health is outreach. And I can't stress strong enough that you've got to go out even where it's not pleasant. You can't wait to be invited. That's my comment. Thank you.
Was there somebody else that had a question? I don't see any others. So if you'd like to go on with purchase orders.
In your packet of materials that were forwarded to you for this meeting is our list of purchase orders over $40,000. I think most of them are fairly self-explanatory. The second one on the list, the EPA Audio Visual Inc. for AV equipment, that is for the county boardroom. The audio equipment that we use here is no longer supported. It needs to be updated. We had planned to do that next year, but because COVID monies allowed us to make certain purchases that we had thought we were going to have to make, we were able to divert money to this project and take care of it this year. So that's the purchase order for the audiovisual equipment here in the county boardroom. I do anticipate sometime next year, knock on wood, we'll be meeting in person, and we need to have the adequate audiovisual equipment in this room. The other stuff is fairly, like I say, self-explanatory, including the what we're paying the University of Wisconsin payroll for our extension office. That's part of our annual contributions to have extension here in Dunn County.
There any questions on the purchase orders? Not. Moving on to your meeting with the UW president.
Yes, in October, I was invited to sit down with the chancellor of UW Stout and Tommy Thompson, the president of the UW system, University of Wisconsin system. He was in town. And he made a point of asking, how can Stout and UW in particular help us? And since he asked, I volunteered 2 things. Number one was to encourage the University of Wisconsin system to highlight the opportunities for work in the civic or public sector. A lot of people think of, especially at Stout, they think of getting a job in industry or private sector. And rarely, I think, people think about coming and working for government, but we have good jobs with good benefits, good people, and it's an opportunity to serve communities. So I asked if UW Stout, and in fact, the entire UW system, could emphasize the opportunities for public sector work with their students and those that are graduating. The second thing I asked him about was what UW could do to address our nursing crisis. We know that there is a waiting list for people who want to go into the nursing program through UW. The program is not big enough to accommodate them. They simply end up waiting. Well, at the same time, we are in a literal crisis in finding RNs, LPNs, and CNAs, in our case for the neighbors, our skilled nursing facility. Mr. Thompson said that he is very well aware of the crisis and the need that he said is high on his agenda. His response was that they are having difficulty finding instructors to enable them to expand the programs. I wanted to cynically rejoin, well, if you offer enough money, you'll get the instructors. But that was his response. In any event, it was good to have an opportunity to meet with the president of University of Wisconsin system and express some of our local needs. And I did appreciate that he reached out to us. So I wanted to share that with everybody.
All right, thank you. Moving on to number 11, reports of departments. Highway Department Financial Report. It's in your packet. Is there any questions? Supervisor Bauer.
Yeah, I was just kind of looking at the budget when you're saying you're going to be over budget on the construction. Is that what it was? But down below, it looks like you could equal that out by pulling money from somewhere else. Is that true?
I think it was over budget on maintenance, if I remember right. We have our interim commissioner with us tonight, Dustin.
If I might, Mr. Chair,
okay.
offer.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Supervisor Bauer, the bottom line is we are projecting an overall deficit for the entire highway department for the year. We identified this earlier this year, that this deficit was projected. It was due to accounting errors where money was spent on equipment, approximately $1.4 million, without having the revenue to match it. And so that is the resulting deficit that we are projecting. Now, we don't know how it will actually play out. If we end up having a relatively light, for instance, snow season here at the end of the year, it could be less than that. And depending on how the money's back and the cost of remaining materials maintenance, it may not be that bad. That really is a worst case scenario projection. But we always operate conservatively. When we discovered that this was happening earlier in the year, we immediately took steps to address that deficit going forward. One of the things that was done this year was a construction project that had been on the books was simply deferred to another year. So we are taking steps. We're also taking steps on the accounting practices to address how it was the error happened in the first place and to try to assure that it does not, with tighter quality controls and oversight. To the extent that there are any more detailed questions, I think the person that would be in a better position to answer them is Keith Stray, our CFO. Dustin Bender is the interim highway commissioner, has stepped in to keep the operation going, but really wasn't party to or privy to the situation that we're addressing. So I think Keith would be in a better position to answer any other questions.
Are there any other questions? Supervisor Larry Burek.
Let's see.
Okay.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just wondering does the county or the highway department have an inventory value every year? Let's just say, we add up all the cost of our, or the value of all our equipment and trucks. And this year, it comes out at X number. Last year it was a different number. I'm just kind of wondering, going back to the discrepancy in purchasing equipment, apparently of some sort, that if there was a number that says this is the value of our equipment at the end of the year, or this is the value of where we're at, would help stave off some of those things on, we ought to be maintaining a certain amount, or we maintain a certain amount plus a certain percentage. But is anything ever done like that as far as the valuation of highway equipment total?
Yes, there is. If our CFO, Mr. Stry, would like to answer that more, he can.
Yeah, I'll just add at a very high level. Yes, there is at least an annual inventory. We have to file a report with the Wisconsin DOT because we do a lot of work for them as well. And part of that process in that annual reporting, there is an accounting on the equipment that is used and so on. One of the changes that will be implemented going forward is there will be a more formalized equipment replacement plan and inventory reporting of equipment to the highway committee. And I would anticipate, I won't be here, but one of the things that we are suggesting that also be formally included in the budget process, so that there's clarity on the value and the need for replacement. And one of the things from a financial planning aspect is you try to smooth that out, so to the extent that you can, barring any emergencies, so that you have a slow and steady replacement schedule instead of spikes. So these are some of the things that are in place. But to answer your question directly, yes, there are reviews as part of the audit and as part of reporting to Wisconsin DOT.
And
Are there any other questions?
just one more follow-up.
All right.
So say, for example, that you're replacing a piece of equipment and it's an excavator of some sort. I mean, trucks are going to cost about what they cost because, a truck costs what a truck costs. But say that you're replacing an excavator and somebody determines that you should have a piece of equipment that could handle, more work than the ones you got. So instead of just buying something to replace what you already have, who makes a decision on we're going to buy something to replace a piece of equipment we have with a different piece of equipment that has a greater possibility of being more effective or more efficient?
From a budgetary perspective, that would be the highway committee. But when the county board and the highway committee establish the budget for equipment purchases in a budget year, that should be vetted. If something new comes up during the year before purchase orders are issued or before purchases are made, there should be an approval in advance, including all the detailed justification behind that as well as funding. So that should be the normal business practice.
And that would go through the highway committee and the commissioner.
Thank you.
Any other Supervisor Bauer and I think Supervisor Gary Bear? Go ahead, Supervisor Bauer first.
Thank you, Chair. I was just curious on your expenditures on the, maybe just an explanation is all I'm looking for on the fuel handling. How does that work where the actual is 92,005 and we only budgeted 17? I just wondering why that's so high.
I don't have a detailed answer for you, to be honest with you. I haven't done a deep dive on any of this. This is all being transitioned as we go through the turnover with the Public Works Director as well as the Accounting Manager, who really were the folks that were actively involved in this. So we can certainly follow up on that and get back to you on that, but I really don't have an answer for you.
We'll let Mr. Stry follow up on that one. Supervisor Gary Bjork, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. When Dunn County Highway does work for the federal government on Interstate 94 or on the state roads for Wisconsin, is that a break even or we make money or is it vary from year to year?
We try to make money, but I would say it's close to a break even.
Yeah, in many cases, the state of Wisconsin has a very specific formula, and we're kind of bound to that. Now, we do provide information to justify the calculated amount that they pay, but they review that quite regularly. We have to provide actuals, and there are adjustments. Yeah, there generally is at least a break even, if not just a slight surplus, but it's really intended in part to reimburse us for the equipment usage, which if things are flowing as they should, builds up your fund balance to replace equipment as you're using it up.
As chair of the relevant committee, we generally net out at least slightly positive from state and federal.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Story.
I'm just wondering, has the highway department taken some time to prioritize projects that they want to do if they get some of this infrastructure money? Will that change things?
They have prioritized, and yes, it will change when they get extra funds.
Okay, the budget will be adjusted.
Well, it's in the budget.
Oh, it's already in there. Okay.
Yes.
The 22 budget, and every year, the highway department has a schedule of construction projects. And they plan it out years in advance. So yes, the additional monies that we're putting toward highway are accounted for in the construction projects that are proposed for fiscal year 22.
Any other questions? I don't see any. I'll remind you that I don't see everybody on my screen. So if I don't see you, hand go up, please speak up. But I don't see any more questions, so we will move on to the report of the county treasurer, the financial report. You've got that in your packet also. Are there any questions for that? And is county treasurer with us?
Sophia is with us tonight,
Okay.
yes.
Is there anything you would like to add, Sophia?
There is not.
All right, thank you. I don't see any questions, so we will, or I think I had one. I did. On the investment sheet that you sent out separate,
Yep.
What's PFM?
So PFM is the company that the county hires to manage our investments.
Okay.
Yep.
In fact, PFM will be making a presentation to the Committee on Administration at its meeting on December 2.
All right. And I assume that because we have more funds in our checking account this year than other years, that we're getting as much interest in our checking account as we do in some of the other accounts. I know that changes from year to year. Is that the reason that that fund seems to be higher?
So the checking account is higher at the time that we pull that data. I mean, that fluctuates a significant amount. During the month of August and September, we are pulling in, we are receiving many delinquent payments and things like that. So that can increase our checking amount as well. So it really varies. I can definitely get you a more detailed answer than that if you're looking for it. But
Okay, but at this point, then we're not putting more money in the checking account because the interest is better. I know years ago.
no, we're not.
One time that happened and we kept more in our checking account than CDs and stuff, but.
Yep. So we have to keep generally a balance of $2 million in our checking account. So we'll move funds depending upon to assure that we stay above that. For example, if payroll is coming and we know that that's coming, that will account for those dollars. But generally our checking account doesn't have a lot of interest and we keep it at that $2 million mark.
All right, thank you. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the,
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question.
sorry,
Supervisor Leno.
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just was looking at this top 10 taxpayers in the county.
Yep.
And I see the number 4 on the list, Wisconsin, Minnesota, AB, LLC, Delaware. Can you enlighten me what that is, or what property or what business that they hold?
I can get you that answer. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Isn't
But
that
I can
3M?
absolutely get you that answer.
No, that is
Isn't that
not,
3M?
It is not 3M.
no, it is not 3M. It's if I remember from prior years, it's a group of investors that own a fair amount of real estate throughout the county, rentals and whatever other real estate, if I remember the answer from previous years.
Okay, so it's not a specific industry or plant or something
No,
like that.
It's not a company, manufacturing company or something like that.
As it says in the type of business, is a private equity firm.
Okay, well, it would be interesting to find out what the holdings are that are being taxed.
Sure, I'd be happy to get that for you.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
That's the only question I have.
All right. Are there any other questions for the treasurer before we move on?
I had one question. This is Supervisor
Okay.
Comrie.
Supervisor Comrie, go ahead.
What is all included in the term for special districts? On your report below school districts, there was special.
So special districts, that amount, as you can see, hasn't changed in the last few years, and I can pull some additional data to find out exactly what falls under that. Generally, yeah, I would want to pull data before I gave you the wrong information.
If you would send that information
No
out to
problem.
everyone then, please. Any other questions before we move on? If not, we'll move on to the Neighbors of Dunn County annual report. Carmen, is there anything you would like to highlight or add to this?
Not anything specific, just that I always do my report from the end of October through the October of the next year instead of an annual to like full year calendar year since it's in November. So the report ranges from November of 2020 through the end of October of 2021, as well as there is a section in there that is related to COVID-19 and the neighbors. That is for the encompassing of since the pandemic started. So instead of breaking it up into the last 12 months, that is the numbers since the beginning of the pandemic, which started affecting the neighbors in March of 2020. So just a little clarification on that in case that was confusing.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions on the report of the Supervisor Kinnear? Go ahead.
Just a comment, I should have maybe brought this up earlier at presentations and petitions, but Dr. Steve Brown retired just recently at the Neighbors, and I think he's been working at the Dunn County Healthcare Center and Neighbors since 1974 or 76. Carmen, you might know, but it's been
I believe 74. I believe 74 as the medical director for many years, and then prior to that as a rounding physician as well.
So just kudos to Dr. Brown and all the good years that he's put in for the county there at the Neighbors and the Healthcare Center.
Thank you for remembering that and mentioning that. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Supervisor Larry Bjork.
I just have a comment. I think about in previous board meetings where we've had a chance to sit in the room and hear the presentation from our department heads and our elected officials, and how it kind of makes you feel as a supervisor that you're getting kind of an idea of the people that are working for Dunn County. And also, I think the amount of work that goes into just put together a presentation that's just mailed out. We probably don't give enough kudos to the time it takes to get that done. So I, for one, am really looking forward to the time when we may have presentations from these people at our board members. And I think that some county board members have been elected and haven't had the opportunity to hear from the county treasurer, to hear from the healthcare people at the Neighbors or any other department or the highway department. It's another disservice that this epidemic has caused us to not be as good as we could be. So I just looking forward to hopefully we can have a time when we will get the live report. Thanks.
I think we'd all agree with you on that, Larry. Are there any other questions on the Neighbors report? Supervisor Bauer.
I just want to compliment them on their 5-star ranking as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is a good compliment. Thank you. Anything else? If not, we will move on to 12. Consideration of resolutions, reports, and ordinances from the standing committees. From the Judiciary and Law Committee, an ordinance amending the County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 7, Section 6.02, regarding child support fees. This is the second reading. So we had a motion and a second last month. Is there any more discussion or questions on this ordinance? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Ordinance carried. Moving on to 12B from the Committee on Administration. A resolution canceling the checks over 2 years old. This is something we do every year. Are there any questions on this resolution? If not, I need a motion for this resolution. Supervisor Bauer moves, Supervisor McCullough seconds. Any questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes. Moving on. B2, a resolution charging back illegal tax certificates. I need a motion on this.
I so move.
Supervisor Steen moves, Supervisor Cumry seconds. This also is something that we do every year. Are there any questions on this resolution? If not, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to B3, resolution approving the settlement of a claim. I need a motion for this resolution. Supervisor Story moves, Supervisor McCullough seconds. Speaking to this resolution, maybe we would like to hear from Corporation Counsel on this.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, you're.
All right, how's that? This is a claim that was made against the county from Haas Sons Inc., which is a construction company. They built the city street that connects the healthcare center road with Red Cedar Street. It runs parallel to Stout Road and provides street access to the new Prevea Clinic and Churchill Tires. Sometime early in 2019, someone managed to manipulate electronic documents, and they put in an order to change how Haas would receive payment for some of their work. It was unknown at the time. It was a criminal who was doing this as a for-profit illegal enterprise. The payment method was changed, and when a request for payment came in, the payment was made. It went to a bank account that was not connected with the construction company. Since that time, a number of security measures have been implemented, and I think it's not going to happen again. The police were contacted. They conducted an investigation. It looks like the likelihood of the county recovering the misappropriated funds is pretty low. But in the event that someone ultimately is charged and held responsible as a result of criminal proceedings, there will be a cause of action that the county has against them. In the meantime, the construction company had filed a claim against the county for the amount that's shown in the $189,000 that reflected the payment that was diverted and some additional funds that were due. There was no formal disallowance of the claim on recommendation from our insurance company to give the parties time to try to negotiate settlement. This did come to both the executive committee and the committee on administration, and we were directed to try to, well, investigate the facts. We do have an attorney that is doing work for us on this. It turned out to be an uninsured loss, and we checked into that several times just to make sure. And so we do have a settlement reached. It's a very favorable, I think, given all of the circumstances, the potential for certain defenses. After a thorough investigation and review of all of the information that we had, it wasn't apparent. And so we deemed it to be appropriate to explore settlement. We've reached a settlement, and that's for $168,000. That does represent savings to the county from not having to litigate, and additional interest that would likely have been due if a judgment had been entered. And so the resolution here just simply approves the settlement that we've reached. It's an unanticipated expense, and it's unfortunate, but the money has to be paid, and we think this is as good as we can do under the circumstances.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Supervisor
I have
Rogers.
a question, or Jim.
Supervisor Rogers. go
So
ahead.
does the county have any form of insurance that covers fraud or theft?
This is not an insured loss. Recently, I'm aware that in administration, they were looking at or exploring additional coverages to provide insurance for some kinds of losses. And I believe one of the coverages they were looking at included insurance for something like this. But we did not have it at that time. And so it's a purely an uninsured loss. There's no insurance coverage to pay it. There's no insurance coverage for getting counsel to represent the county.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Resolution passes. Moving on to 12B4, resolution adopting the FY 2022 pay grid and other compensation. Now, this pay grid and compensation is in the 22 budget that we'll be looking at later. So it's already figured in there. I need a motion for this.
So moved.
Supervisor Morehouse moves, Supervisor Leno seconds. Speaking to this, any questions first off? Very nice explanation. Is our HR director Heather with us?
No, she's out of town and
Okay.
unable to join us today. But I'd be happy to try to.
Was-
field any
Is there
questions.
anything you'd like to add, Mr. Miller?
Just to point out, I think most of you are aware that among the changes that for fiscal year 22, we are implementing the results of a class and compensation study that was conducted by an outside firm that we retained for that purpose, Carlson Detman. So this does change our pay grid, and the upshot for most employees of Dunn County will be a 5% adjustment to their salaries. But it also has the effect of bringing us much closer to what the market is for the variety of job positions that we have here in Dunn County. So hopefully we remain competitive. As everybody knows, it's becoming more and more of a challenge to attract qualified employees to fill vacancies.
Any questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to 12C then. This comes from the Executive Committee, a resolution amending the FY 2021 budget. That's this year's budget. I need a motion for that.
So moved.
Supervisor Lino moves, Supervisor McCullough seconds. Are there any questions? There's lots of good background information here, so are there any questions on this? If there is, Mr. Stry is here to answer them. And if not, we will have the clerk call the roll.
Supervisor Jensen,
Yeah.
Supervisor Johnson,
Yes.
Supervisor Kennedy, Supervisor Kennedy,
Yes.
Supervisor Kennedy votes yes. Supervisor Kinnear,
Yes.
Supervisor Kinnear votes yes. Supervisor Cromry,
Yes.
Supervisor Cromry votes yes. Supervisor Keeter,
Yes.
Supervisor Keeter votes yes. Supervisor Lenow,
Yes.
Supervisor Lenow votes yes. Supervisor Maves,
Yes.
Supervisor Maves votes yes. Supervisor McCullough,
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough votes yes. Supervisor Morehouse,
Yes.
Supervisor Morehouse votes yes. Supervisor Niehoff,
Yes.
Supervisor Niehoff votes yes. Supervisor Prochnow,
Yes.
Supervisor Prochnow votes yes. Supervisor Quinn, Supervisor Quinn,
I think he may have dropped off.
Supervisor Rogers,
No.
Supervisor Rogers votes no. Supervisor Score,
Yes.
Supervisor Score votes yes. Supervisor Steen,
Yes.
Supervisor Steen votes yes. Supervisor Story,
Yes.
Supervisor Story votes yes. Supervisor Tripp,
Yes.
Supervisor Tripp votes yes. Supervisor Vandermeulen,
Yes.
Supervisor Vandermeulen votes yes. Supervisor Vogel,
Yes.
Supervisor Vogel votes yes. Supervisor Zons,
Yes.
Supervisor Zons votes yes. Supervisor Anderson,
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson votes yes. Supervisor Bauer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bauer votes yes. Supervisor Gary Bjork,
Yes.
Supervisor Gary Bjork votes yes. Supervisor Larry Bjork,
Yes.
Supervisor Larry Bjork votes yes. Supervisor Calabrese,
Yes.
Supervisor Hartung, Supervisor Headland,
Yes.
Supervisor Headland votes yes. Supervisor Quinn,
Yes.
Supervisor Quinn votes yes. Chairman Bartlett,
Yes,
Chairman Bartlett votes yes. That passes.
resolution passes. Thank you. Moving on to C2, 12C2, resolution adopting the FY 2022 budget. This is for next year. I need a motion.
Move.
Who is that said move?
Johnson, Supervisor Johnson.
Okay, Supervisor Johnson, thank you. And Supervisor Morehouse second. Speaking to the budget. Mr. Stry, you want to do that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. This and the next agenda item are the last two steps of the 10-month-long budget process that the county goes through annually. This first resolution would, if passed, adopt the full 2022 budget as presented. This is what was presented in the public hearing notice and advertised in accordance with Wisconsin statutes. And I've received no feedback, and we had no comments tonight at the public hearing. So with that, I'd recommend your approval of the resolution.
Any questions?
Supervisor Kinnear.
Go ahead, Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Mr. Stride just said, I guess we are still using then about $3 million combined from COVID money and borrowing to cover our operating expenses in a roundabout way. And we have not cut anything this year from the budget. Is that pretty much a summary?
That is the way I see it, yes. I think we're borrowing about 3 million, we're using about 4 million. And I'm rounding these numbers off of ARPA money for highway, and we haven't cut any services.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? And if I'm correct, I think that $3 million that we're borrowing is going to highway also, or the majority of it, at least. Any other questions on this budget? If not, I don't see any. I don't hear any. So we will, this is a roll call vote also? No.
Adopting the budget is just.
Oh, adopting is not.
Then I request that it be a roll call vote, please.
You sure can. You bet. All right, we will have the clerk call the roll then.
Supervisor Johnson.
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson votes yes. Supervisor Kennedy.
Yes.
Supervisor Kennedy votes yes. Supervisor Kinnear.
No.
Supervisor Kinnear votes no. Supervisor Cromry.
Yes.
Supervisor Cromry votes yes. Supervisor Keeter.
Yes.
Supervisor Keeter votes yes. Supervisor Lenow.
Yes.
Supervisor Lenow votes yes. Supervisor Maves.
Yes.
Supervisor Maves votes yes. Supervisor McCullough.
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough votes yes. Supervisor Morehouse.
Yes.
Supervisor Morehouse votes yes. Supervisor Niehoff.
Yes.
Supervisor Niehoff votes yes. Supervisor Prochnow.
Yes.
Supervisor Prochnow votes yes. Supervisor Quinn. Supervisor Quinn.
Yes.
Supervisor Quinn votes yes.
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers votes yes. Supervisor Score.
Yes.
Supervisor Score votes yes. Supervisor Steen.
Yes.
Supervisor Steen votes yes. Supervisor Story.
Yes.
Supervisor Story votes yes. Supervisor Tripp.
Yes.
Supervisor Tripp votes yes. Supervisor Vandermeulen.
Yes.
Supervisor Vandermeulen votes yes. Supervisor Vogel.
Yes.
Supervisor Vogel votes yes. Supervisor Zons.
Yes.
Supervisor Zons votes yes. Supervisor Anderson.
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson votes yes. Supervisor Bauer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bauer votes yes. Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Yes.
Supervisor Gary Bjork votes yes. Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Yes.
Supervisor Larry Bjork votes yes. Supervisor Calabrese.
Yes.
Supervisor Calabrese votes yes. Supervisor Headland.
Yes.
Supervisor Headland votes yes. Supervisor Jensen.
No.
Supervisor Jensen votes no. Chairman Bartlett.
No,
Chairman Bartlett votes no. That passes.
the resolution passes. Moving on to 12C3, resolution adopting the FY 2022 levy. I need a motion, I need a motion on this. Supervisor McCullough moves. Supervisor Lino seconds. Mr. Stride, you want to speak to this also?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you.
This is the second part of the budget adoption process, and this is setting the tax levy and adopting it for the funding. And this is the annual format that's required to be passed to make sure that this goes on the tax roll for the treasurer to establish the tax bills. So this resolution has been reviewed by the executive committee, and we are in compliance with the levy limit requirements as far as tax levy. That was also a very restrictive factor in the budget process, as you know from prior discussions. So these are the results, and this is up for your approval tonight.
Any questions on the levy, this resolution? If
Chairman.
Supervisor Rogers.
So as I made the comment last month, I don't agree with how we're borrowing and spending that money as part of our budget. So I won't be supporting that because there's borrowed money in there that's not really going to where I believe it was intended when the borrowing was approved.
Right. Any other? Supervisor Larry Bjork.
I just like a little follow-up on the levy limit and how that's related to the growth in the county, and what kind of growth has the county had? I mean, how much money is available to the county by growth within the county of businesses and homes?
Are you asking how much it increased, the levy limit increased from last year to this year?
Well, I guess I've heard that 7% at time is what your county, to have your county grow. How much has our county grown, and how many dollars does that make available to the county?
Okay. Mr. Stride, do you have that?
I do. Actually, Supervisor Rogers had a very similar question earlier today about that, and I did some research on that. The state of Wisconsin provides countywide equalized value growth for each county, and they set that via their method, and they provide that the middle of August. The county's reported growth for this year was 6.69%. That's great. That shows that property values are going up. Unfortunately, under the structure of the levy limit law, we could only increase our tax levy by less than 1%, or just over $200,000. That doesn't even cover our basic costs. So basically, on a percentage basis, that left 5.76% of property value growth that we could not claim for revenue. And this has been going on for 15 years. And so the ratchet effect, your baseline, sits there stagnant. So your growth, you could be doing all kinds of great economic development and having property value growth. And I know that's been a conversation throughout the CIP, and when there was conversation about borrowing and about our finances in general, and how can we finance our operations and all the services that the county values and wants to provide. But that's the economic reality of what the levy freeze, the levy limit law does to us, and has been in place for over 15 years. Calculated lost revenue just this year alone for this budget process is just short of $1.1 million. So if you put it in a 1 year window, we could have reduced our borrowing by 1.1 million and completed the projects that we're borrowing for using that tax levy. If that was your choice, if that was your, that option's not even on the table under the Wisconsin law. So, and multiply that by how many years, and some years are closer than others. This was a really good year for equalized value growth. Other years are not quite that strong. But when I do a look back to 2010, our ability to increase our tax rate under levy limit has consistently and consecutively been well under the maximum amount we could have done under equalized value. So it really ties the hand of the county board and local units of government from one of their major sources of revenue.
Follow
Any
up,
other questions?
follow up.
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor Bjork.
Do you have any knowledge? Does that same formula follow with the school districts? I always would assume that the school districts receive extra funding as the valuation within the school district changes.
They have a little bit different setup. They've got a revenue cap, which is a little bit different. That was in place even before the levy limit freeze came into account, but they're operating under very similar tight restrictions. I don't know I specifically the details on a school district. I haven't done a school district audit in over 20 years. So, but I know they're having very similar issues talking with my counterparts in other taxing jurisdictions.
Any other questions on the budget? Anybody else before Supervisor Bjork goes again? Supervisor Steen.
Yes, Keith, would it be safe to say that if the county would go to referendum and ask the taxpayer to go over the referendum by 6%, the net effect of that would be the same as if we didn't have the revenue or the spending limit. Is that correct?
At a very high level, depending on how it's crafted, yeah, if you went with 6%, you'd be very close, to basically these estimates.
So I guess my point being is that the referendum is never discussed, or not very much, but that is a tool to deliver more income for the county and to keep pace with inflation. Just a comment.
Any other comments? Supervisor Larry Bjork, go ahead again.
It just kind of hits me that the same night that we get the report from the treasurer's office and the taxpayers, top 10 taxpayers in the county, and that we work really hard, whether we're supporting our local economic development or we're supporting West Central Regional, which I think got an increase from Dunn County this year. It's hard for me to believe that we spend all this time and money and effort in trying to entice people to build and settle in Dunn County, bring their businesses, bring their jobs, and bring their employees, and that the county doesn't seem to be able to generate enough income from that new growth to build a road for the people that move here. It's just crazy.
Supervisor Rogers.
I would like to say what, as Supervisor Gary Steen said, that maybe a referendum so people know that that the need is there, but yet they can make the decision to accept a raise in their taxes instead of the way we do it. I would certainly say that in the future, maybe that would be a good option that he brought up.
Any other speaking to the levy? I don't see any more, so all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Resolution passes. Moving on to 12C4, resolution adopting the 2022 legislative agenda that you have in your packet. We talked about it at all committee meetings. Are there any questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes. Moving on to 12C5, resolution adopting the redistricting plan. I need a motion. Supervisor Steen moves, Supervisor McCullough seconds. Speaking to the redistricting plan. First off, are there any questions? Andrew, Andrew, would you like
Sure.
to add anything to it?
Certainly. Thank you, Chairman Bartlett. So what has been presented into your packet are all of the legal descriptions on the new redistricting process. As of this morning, before 8 a.m., I might add on the very last day, all of our municipalities within Dunn County have completed their steps to adopt their wards that were required. Of the 30 municipalities, 16 were required to do a redistricting process, all of which have been completed. If this resolution is adopted tonight, we will be submitting our redistricting plans to the Secretary of State as soon as tomorrow. So well ahead of the deadline for the state, even though we're on a compressed timeline, but this would be the final step in the process for redistricting for 2021.
Any questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes. Moving on to 12C6, resolution opposing Wisconsin Assembly Bill 605. I need a motion.
So moved.
Supervisor Lino moves, Supervisor Tripp seconds. Speaking to this resolution. Any questions on this resolution? Mr. Supervisor Tripp, is this the one you recommended that we pass, but we don't send anything forward, or am I thinking of a different one?
No, you're correct, Mr. Chair. An amendment to the original bill makes this provision apply only to counties with more than 50,000 population. So it doesn't apply to Dunn County. So my recommendation is that we pass this because that puts us on record in opposition to an outside agency telling us how we have to spend our money. So just puts us on record is all. The other part in most resolutions that we pass like this, there's a provision in the resolution that would forward this to the state legislature, the governor, other interested parties. You'll notice that in this resolution, there is no provision like that. And I think that's appropriate as well. Because it doesn't directly apply to us, I don't think we should get bogged down trying to defend or promote or lobby in favor of this or in opposition to this bill. We've got enough other things to lobby for. So it's a good idea, but we don't need to make a lot of noise about it.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion resolution passes. Moving on to 12C7, a resolution authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed $3.1 million and providing for the issuance and the sale of general obligation promissory notes therefore. I need a motion for this.
So
Supervisor
moved.
McCullough moves, Supervisor Lino seconds. Mr. Stride, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. This is the first step now that the county has passed its adopted budget for 2022 in the debt issuance process. And this is being presented to you tonight in preparation for beginning that process. I bring that for you tonight, similar to other past years where we've done it the night of adoption on occasion to have things on record and ready to roll, in particular with transition of the CFO position in January of next year, so that when the timing is right, this initial step is in place for the municipal advisor as well as staff to begin that process. This really is in follow through to what was in the adopted budget to purchase replacement vehicles, radio systems, generator replacements, roof projects, all of the specific projects identified in the capital project list that was included in the budget and in the information presented through the budget process. So these are all the specific projects and purchases that were identified in the budget process. This resolution would authorize us to begin the process for issuing the debt at some point in 2022.
Any questions?
Roll call. It may be better given Zoom.
Supervisor
Chairman.
Rogers.
So is this is for the 2022 year that we just approved, not the year moving forward budget, correct?
That
This
is correct.
For the
This-
22 budget, yes,
Correct.
next year,
That we just approved.
yes.
Okay.
There any other questions? If not, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote because this needs a 3/4 majority. So we'll have the clerk call the roll.
Supervisor Kennedy.
Yes.
Supervisor Kennedy votes yes. Supervisor Kinnear.
Yes.
Supervisor Kinnear votes yes. Supervisor Cromry.
Yes.
Supervisor Cromry votes yes. Supervisor Keeter.
Yes.
Supervisor Keeter votes yes. Supervisor Leno.
Yes.
Supervisor Leno votes yes. Supervisor Maves.
Yes.
Supervisor Maves votes yes. Supervisor McCullough.
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough votes yes. Supervisor Morehouse.
Yes.
Supervisor Morehouse votes yes. Supervisor Niehoff.
Yes.
Supervisor Niehoff votes yes. Supervisor Prochnow.
Yes.
Supervisor Prochnow votes yes. Supervisor Quinn.
Yes.
Supervisor Quinn votes yes. Supervisor Rogers. Supervisor Rogers.
No.
Supervisor Rogers votes no. Supervisor Score.
Yes.
Supervisor Score votes yes. Supervisor Steen.
Yes.
Supervisor Steen votes yes. Supervisor Story.
Yes.
Supervisor Story votes yes. Supervisor Tripp.
Yes.
Supervisor Tripp votes yes. Supervisor Vandermeulen.
Yes.
Supervisor Vandermeulen votes yes. Supervisor Vogel.
Yes.
Supervisor Vogel votes yes. Supervisor Zons.
Yes.
Supervisor Zons votes yes. Supervisor Anderson.
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson votes yes. Supervisor Bauer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bauer votes yes. Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Yes.
Supervisor Gary Bjork votes yes. Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Yes.
Supervisor Larry Bjork votes yes. Supervisor Calabrese.
Yes.
Supervisor Calabrese votes yes. Supervisor Headland.
Yes.
Supervisor Headland votes yes. Supervisor Jensen.
No.
Supervisor Jensen votes no. Supervisor Johnson.
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson votes yes. Chairman Bartlett.
Yes,
Chairman Bartlett votes yes.
resolution passes.
Mr.
Moving
Chair,
on to- Yes, somebody, Supervisor Dean?
Supervisor Steen, yes, maybe my computer cut out, but going back to 12B3, did we have a motion and a second on that? 12B3.
Yes.
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 All right. I missed the beat somewhere. I apologize.
I thank you for keeping me on my toes though, because sometimes I do forget. But we'll move on to 12D from the Health and Human Services Board, a resolution establishing the room and board fee schedule. I need a motion for this. Supervisor Morehouse moves.
I'll second.
Supervisor Steen seconds. Speaking to this, Supervisor Morehouse, would you like to explain this a little bit?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
This is a resolution required by a changed state administrative rule that governs the way counties can collect monies for services. So what this is essentially allows the county to do is to collect fees from persons placed in adult placement to offset county levy costs for those placements. The agreed upon, arrived upon figure is $25 per day or $600 per month. This is a sort of more equitable and more consistent way to collect those fees. And it, of course, is adjusted by the financial status of the persons in placement. So the Health and Human Services Board has approved this, and I urge your approval.
Any questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes. Moving on to 12E. From the Planning Resource Development Committee, ordinance denying a rezoning petition in the town of Sherman. I need a motion for this. Supervisor Quinn moves. Supervisor Kinnear seconds. Speaking to the resolution, Supervisor Quinn, would you like to explain this, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can people hear me? My internet connection is not very.
It's good right now.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is very briefly, this was a request to rezone a property in Sherman Township from general ag to R1 residential. We had a hearing on September 14th, and in the process of reviewing the application materials, information from staff, public comments, it was determined by the committee that a portion of this property was currently being used to support commercial activities in the adjacent commercial parcel. And that included storage and use for equipment and transportation. And the committee felt like that use was incompatible, one with being adjacent to a residential parcel, if it was rezoned, and two, may even be incompatible with the current general ag use. And so we recommended rejecting the rezone request until those issues can be resolved. And we're suggesting that to the board.
Any questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes. All right, announcements. Anybody have any announcements at this time?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Mr. Miller?
we have not determined for certain. Normally, we do not have a county board meeting in December. But we may have a need for a special meeting of the county board in December related to the opioid litigation settlement. We're still awaiting details on that. I wanted to give all supervisors kind of the heads up on that possibility. Tentatively, please take a look at your calendars, tentatively December 15. And if anybody has a serious or has a conflict, please let me know. You can email me or call me. We're not pulling the trigger yet on setting it for certain, but I wanted to give you the heads up that it may happen. Thank you.
Any other announcements?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Supervisor Calabrese?
Supervisor Calabrese, go ahead.
If we do not have that meeting in December, will this be Mr. Stray's last meeting?
No, he'll be with us in January, Supervisor Calabrese.
Okay, I'll save my accolades until then. Thank you.
Maybe talk yourself out of it.
Hey, I have one, per diems, we would like to get in before the end of the year. It saves Andrew and Christine a lot of work. It also saves them a lot of work if you turn them in every month. We've had some that come in like a whole year's worth, and that they have to go back and look at those meetings, and that's difficult to go way back. It's a lot easier to be doing it only going back a month at a time. So one thing I'm asking is if we can try to turn in our per diems every month. And the other thing is there's a date in December that you would like them in by. What's that date?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Bartlett. The date that we would like per diems to be turned in by would be Monday, December 20th. Monday, December 20th. That would give us enough time with the holidays to ensure that the final per diems will be able to be entered in for the fiscal year 2021.
Any questions on that? Any other announcements?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Supervisor Maves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This isn't an announcement. It's just a position from me to the other board members. I do support a referendum based upon the way things are going. And I know you just can't say we're going to have a referendum. There's a lot of rules and hoops you got to jump through. So I would strongly urge the staff to figure out how that would all work in the next year. I know the state has put in a lot of I call them hoops to jump through. But I believe the time has come for a referendum, and we need to get our ducks in a row and let the taxpayers of Dunn County know just how bad the last 15 years, what it's really done. So thank you.
All right, I believe next year would be the year to have a referendum. It wouldn't have worked good this year without the election in the fall, and I believe next year would be the good year to have one. So we should probably start talking about that fairly early in the year. Probably start at executive committee in January or February. So we'll ask Mr. Miller to put that on the agenda.
Will do.
Anything else? Oh, and Andrew, go ahead.
Supervisors Tripp, Headland, Morehouse, and Quinn, if you could stop by the county clerk's office, I have some paperwork for you to sign based on the resolutions and ordinances tonight. Also, for all those supervisors, it's going to be election time soon. You can start taking out papers or declare your non-candidacy starting at the end of this month. Don't circulate your papers until December 1st, but we are preparing your packets for you to take out from the county clerk's office, and I will let you know when they are ready.
Anything else? All right. Thank you. We're adjourned.